Welcome to the Book Faire Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have a collection of new releases, including a title from debut indigenous author Christopher Roubique, a worrying new directive from the State Department targeting nonprofit libraries, and a local school board votes against banning a title after complaints from parents. Coming up this Friday, we will also have an interview with author Maureen Devlin. First, let's take a look at new releases, starting with The Weedy Garden, A Happy Habitat for Wild Friends by Margaret Renkl and illustrated by Billy Renkl. A bumblebee, snake, squirrel, speckled toad, and more take up space in The Weedy Garden, celebrated in this elegant picture book from sibling team The Renkls. Poetic, frequently alliterative, second-person lines offer concise lyrical profiles. If you're a green hummingbird, glinting and gleaming, you dance at the first glad glimpse of trumpet vine. Immersive full bleed spreads lend a diorama-like feel to jam-packed mixed media scenes that display vintage species cutouts and emphasize fauna's natural camouflage. A goldfinch plays hide-and-seek among the black-eyed Susans, an earthworm tunnels between the weedy roots, and flowers keep a cottontail rabbit's presence secret. As more and more beings enjoy their treats, a friendly message of creaturely community is conveyed to a final presented species, a pale-skinned human child sitting still in the clover. Back matter includes more about the highlighted animals, and this book is recommended for ages 4 to 8. Next is Hail Mariam by Huda Al-Marashi. An Iraqi-American Muslim tween contends with growing pains upon transferring to a Catholic middle school in this moving novel by Al-Marashi, informed by the author's childhood. Though 6th grader Mariam Hassan feels uneasy about her new school, her parents disregard the youth's emotions, instead encouraging Mariam to impress her classmates. If you are good, then people will think good things about the Arabs and the Muslims. She resolves to run for class president, but encounters tension upon learning that popular peer Lauren is also running. A realization that exacerbates Mariam's fears of being unable to make connections as the only Muslim student. When she's chosen to portray Mary in the school's upcoming Christmas play, what seems to Mariam like a surefire way to boost her popularity sours after Lauren points out that Islamic tenets around representing prophets could prevent Mariam from participating. The discovery that Mariam's beloved younger sister has a mass in her lung adds further complications to the plot of this nuanced children's debut, which features memorable characterizations and realistic moral dilemmas. Depictions of interfaith collaboration, Mariam suggesting reading a passage from the Quran during a Christmas production to show how similar our stories are, add texture to evergreen topics about belonging and overcoming hardships with support from family and friends. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is Myth Speaker by debut author Christopher Roubique. Cajun and indigenous author Roubique draws inspiration from indigenous American tales to craft a rousing, action-packed adventure. 8 years before the books start, when Kitalmudi of the Aido tribe was 5, an ancient supernatural tribal figure called Dear Mother prophesied that Kita, born with the extraordinary gift of understanding any language, will save the world. Now 13-year-old Kita feels burdened by his impending destiny, which could occur at any time. When he learns that colonizing invaders known as the Tenamusu have stolen the egg of the world turtle, Kita is certain that this is the fateful event Dear Mother foretold. If the egg is not returned to the world turtle soon, the world will perish. After attempts to negotiate with the Tinamasu's cruel, pale-skinned leader, Fail, Kita, inspired by a legendary trickster Coyote, assembles a team of local kids, a horse thief, a bird-brained outcast, and a fool, and schemes to steal the egg back. Imaginative world-building is enlivened by engaging characters contending with grounded emotions such as loneliness and insecurity as they strive to perform heroic and inspiring feats in this timeless and original celebration of indigenous stories. An author's note and glossary concludes, and this book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Our next title is Limelight by Andrew Keenan Bolger. Broadway actor Keenan Bolger celebrates the healing capabilities of theater in his lightly fantastical solo debut set in 1996. The life of Staten Island 16-year-old Danny Victorio is turned upside down when he learns he and his mother are forced to flee his physically abusive father and move into the apartment once occupied by Danny's late uncle. Hoping to relieve his mother of the financial strain of Catholic school tuition and escape the bullying he experiences daily, Danny auditions for and is accepted into LaGuardia High School of Performing Arts, thanks in part to gentle encouragement from his late uncle's ghost. At school, he meets effervescent classmate Christian Geronimo, a dance student and drag queen in training who takes Danny under his wing. Soon, Danny finds himself absorbed into a tight-knit friend group and realizes that, for the first time, he feels that he can finally explore his own identity and decides who he wants to be. Somber, close, third-person narration centers Danny's raw emotions and rocky path towards self-actualization, along which he must navigate issues brought about by the AIDS epidemic and personal trauma. Sometimes uneven characterization is buoyed by Danny and Christian's stirring relationship and the vivid metropolitan setting. Danny is white, Christian is Filipino-American, and this book is recommended for ages 12 and up. The final book to highlight for this week is The 12 by Joey Gacefa and Mackenzie Lynn Marr. Gacefa and Marr blend action, adventure, and magical spectacle in this fast-paced fantasy novel. When they're attacked by a rogue shape-shifting dark witch on their 16th birthday, orphaned twins Ophelia and Serena defend themselves using magical powers they didn't know they had. The sisters are then rescued by a team of teenage witches who whisk them away to the Manor, a sprawling mansion on a secluded island. There, the siblings are invited to join a coven of powerful zodiac witches who stand against the corrupting influence of the ominous darkness. Ophelia receives the codename Pisces, drawn from her ability to control water. Electricity wielder Serena becomes Aries, now inducted into the secret war between the forces of light and dark. The sisters must quickly become proficient in their abilities if they intend to prevent the Dark Witches from amassing their own all-powerful coven. The lore is slimly developed, and the overlapping plot lines of the sizable cast, who each boast varied powers, personalities, and priorities, are sometimes difficult to follow. Lofty prose depicts Serena and Ophelia's battling the temptation of power, wrestling with revelations concerning their lineage, and working to find their place in the world. Characters are described as having varying skin tones, and this book is recommended for ages 13 and up. Next, we'll be looking at some news. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Faire Podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at Book Faire Pod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Faire podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Let's take a look at some news, starting with an update coming from the U.S. State Department targeting nonprofit libraries. Not all libraries are funded by tax dollars. Nonprofit libraries do exist and largely operate in rural areas where government funding for public libraries is not as robust. While nonprofit libraries do not typically have the same funding or offer as many programs as most public libraries, they are still a valuable service for their local communities. One example of services offered by nonprofit libraries is the ability to process and assist applications for passports. That is, they were until the U.S. State Department ordered that nonprofit libraries must cease processing passport applications. Late in 2025, nonprofit libraries were informed they were no longer going to be authorized to participate in the Passport Acceptance Facility program. According to the American Library Association, there are roughly 1,400 nonprofit public libraries across the United States that will be impacted by the new order. There are many reasons for people to need a passport, and in the last year there has been an increase in applications across the country. Though one particular coincidence raises alarm for the timing of this new change from the State Department. The SAVE Act, a piece of federal legislation that is currently stalled in the Senate, would require a photo ID that matches the information on your birth certificate in order to vote. One criticism against the provision of the SAVE Act has been pointed out by groups already: that women who take their spouse's name in marriage will have a discrepancy between their ID and their birth certificate. Other people that can be impacted by the SAVE Act include transgender people who have legally changed their name. Not all states allow people to amend their birth certificate. And another potential problem is simply individuals whose parents misspelled their name on their birth certificate, a surprisingly common occurrence. Thankfully, the SAVE Act contains a pathway to verify eligibility to vote when there are differences between ID and birth certificate. This ties together with our story because one of the valid forms of identification someone can use in place of their birth certificate is a valid passport. In combination with conservative lawmakers pressuring states to implement voter ID laws, this is a thinly veiled attempt at voter suppression. The SAVE Act is currently being stopped by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, of all people. Even if this bill never gets passed, the impact of this change from the State Department will negatively impact communities that rely on their local libraries. Nonprofit libraries make up roughly 15% of all public libraries across the United States. Make sure you check with your local library, find out if it is publicly funded or considered not-for-profit, and if you need to be prepared to find other resources if you are in need of a passport in the near future. Our next story comes from Pennsylvania, where the Elizabethtown School Board rejected 3 modern novels for use in contemporary English literature instruction. 10th grade students in English classes at Elizabethtown Area High School will be covering some well-established classics as part of their curriculum. However, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott and The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald were only 2 of 5 novels proposed to the school board as part of the year's lesson plan, with contemporary fiction being strangely rejected from the curriculum proposal. The 3 titles not selected for the 10th grade English curriculum are Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This recent rejection is not new to Elizabethtown. In October, the school board removed 3 titles from the curriculum: The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, and The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. These 3 titles were meant to be replaced in the curriculum at the recent school board meeting. However, the board had objections to their inclusion. One board member, Liza Bazarian, even said that the new selections were decidedly worse than the ones removed. She even claimed that their proposal was a political choice meant to aggravate the board. This rejection is not meant to be conflated with a book ban. Turtles All the Way Down is currently available in the school library. The board president said of the rejection, quote, "I think we just have a desire to see more positive storylines, something that maybe just isn't quite as dystopian," end quote. Board member Bazarian said, quote, "I, for one, am opting out of glorification of despair and decay. I am opting out of a culture that pretends garbage is golden because so-called experts pinned a medal on it," end quote. During public comment, local 10th grade English teacher Liz Yearsley expressed her confusion at the board's decision. Quote, "I'm not sure what you read that made you think these novels were so depressing. I've read all of these books in their entirety and I would disagree with your assessment," end quote. It's important to note that art is a reflection of life and the era it is written in. There are always aspects that are darker, but choosing to shield young readers from reality does not adequately prepare them for adulthood. Contemporary fiction, especially these titles, which would be classified as real fiction, are meant to act as a mirror for the time and the place that they are made. Studying modern titles from sometimes controversial authors builds critical thinking skills. Not to discredit the classics that the Elizabethtown School Board opted for, but only focusing on older titles leaves out an important part of literature, which is the part that young readers are able to see as it unfolds and grows along with them. Our next story comes from Arkansas, where public libraries are seeing a delay to state aid. Recently on the Book Faire Podcast, we covered a story from Chicago where county libraries saw a delay in funding, and now a similar story has broken out of Arkansas. Where there were admissions of errors in Cook County, the Arkansas State Library Board is simply refusing to distribute over $1 million in quarterly funding to public libraries. The board's 6 members voted unanimously not to distribute state-approved funds on Friday the 13th of February. Board Chairman Clay Goff told the Arkansas Advocate, quote, "Just passing out money with no set rules is not good stewardship of public funds," end quote. Libraries across the state have expressed that with this freeze in funding, there will need to be some difficult decisions made going forward. John McGraw, director of the Van Buren County Libraries, said that the funding was expected to fund summer reading programs, and with a smaller population, the county has less tax revenue to spread around various services. Funding with Arkansas state libraries has been an ongoing battle since conservative representatives were elected in a majority in the last election, with Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders signing a law that dismissed all 7 members of the library board and appointing 6 new members, pending a 7th. This is a perfect microcosm of the struggles libraries are facing at the hands of state and federal legislation. Now, the final story for this week, some positive news. Palmyra School District in Pennsylvania had recently submitted a proposal that included funds for acquiring multiple copies of a book for an intermediate French language class. That book, titled Alice la Liste, a 2019 French novel by Cécile Lenné, was approved for use in the French 2 curriculum with a narrow vote after public dispute regarding concerns over the book's content. Alice Laliste was recommended by the administrators of Palmyra School District while building the lesson plan for their French 2 classes. It follows a French-Algerian girl whose family is moving from southern France to Paris. While mostly introspective of Alice's journal, the novel also explores themes of racism and Islamophobia. 2 school board members in a previous meeting stated their intent to reject the book based on cultural topics and influences. Since that December meeting, the school received numerous comments from the public online about the potential removal of the title from the upcoming curriculum. Thankfully, the public spoke out against the board, claiming their concerns were unfounded. One resident said, quote, "Alice Laliste provides an engaging, relatable story that gives our students the opportunity to exercise their French skills while also modeling setting goals, determination, tenacity, and maturity. None of these sound like fringe topics to me, and none of these sounds like a reason to reject the book from the French curriculum." End quote. What exactly were the board's concerns about the book? Board member Seth Steinmeltz said that there were topics and insights found in Google searches that he didn't believe were appropriate for the school to discuss. The board president, who was also voting against the book, was equally ignorant to its content, saying, quote, really quickly, this is a direct quote, and I'm having a hard time making sense of it. I'm going to read it as best as I can. Quote, "I can't read French. I don't know what's in it. Maybe it's the best book in the world, may not be. But I don't know, and as a parent, I would like to have easy access to that book to be able to just read and know what it's about." End quote. And again, this person voted against the book. Ultimately, the Palmyra School Board approved the book and the funds in a 5-3 vote. This will conclude another episode of the Book Faire Podcast. Coming this Friday, we have an interview with author Maureen Devlin. If you'd like to stay up to date with the show, you can follow wherever you are currently listening or on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Book Faire Pod. If you'd like to help the Book Faire Podcast grow, you can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. You can find links to news sources as well as episodes posted early. Simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, the best way to help the Book Faire Podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.